Yo, what is going on, everybody? This is RBT and welcome back to another Madden 18 video. And today I'm going to share all my tips and tricks on how to rebuild a team in Madden 18. I'm not the best at this, obviously, but I've done it enough that I know some of the secret tips that you might not know of in terms of rebuilding a team. What is the easiest way to trade? What players have more value, just some secret stuff that you might not know of that lies within Connected Franchise. But all in all, hopefully this video will end up helping some of you guys who do enjoy the rebuild videos, so hopefully you can go out and rebuild your teams, whatever team that may be. With that said, I'm not really sure. I'm kind of really unorganized when it comes to this video, so it's going to be a lot of tips put together. I'm going to show you really how I go about rebuilding teams, what positions I think need to be certain overalls, and etc, etc. So probably going to be very unorganized, but it's just going to be a lot of tips compiled into today's video, showing some tips and tricks that hopefully can help you out in your own rebuild. So hopefully you guys do enjoy, and if you do, make sure to drop a like. Let's see if we can smash, let's try to hit 3,000 likes for a tutorial, an RBT rare tutorial video on the channel. And be sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new and turn on the notification bell if you haven't. But with that said, let's get right into the tutorial and show you guys how to be great in terms of rebuilding your teams, because we all know I'm the GOAT. So for starters, I just randomly decided to choose the Denver Broncos in week 12 and turn the trade deadline off. Why? Because I used the real life roster because it takes way too long for me to load the custom rosters into the game, so that took about 10 minutes. So instead, me just being lazy, not wanting to wait, I just went to week 12 with the real life roster because they take a lot less time to load. But let's go ahead and assess the roster and tell you what I would think need to be changed for this team to do really good in a rebuild. So I would say offensive line isn't the most important position when assessing a rebuild in terms of trading for players at those positions, but the reason I always do is because offensive linemen are really easy to trade for. You can easily trade if you want to be very boring and trade for the same players every single year in year one. You can easily get at least a 90 overall offensive line with maybe at most trading away a second round draft pick. But if you want to be successful and you have a limited amount of resources to trade away, I think if you could be okay with an 85 overall offensive line across the board, maybe some 90 sprinkled in, but offensive line isn't that important. Now at tight end, I try to have at least one 90 overall tight end on the team. Now the backup tight end position isn't that important, but I don't want to have like a 60 overall backup tight end. I try to at least have like maybe an 80 overall backup tight end. Now the reason I always get like a 90 plus overall tight end is because tight ends are about just as easy to trade for as the offensive line. You can get guys like Jimmy Graham, Greg Olsen, Jason Witten's another one, for relatively easy, and by easy I mean maybe a third round draft pick. So tight ends, I mean, it is pretty important in terms of improvement of team in a rebuild, but I wouldn't go too crazy like trading away a first round draft pick. For offensive line and for tight end, I would not trade away a first round draft pick for anybody. At most, maybe a second, and that's stretching things. So do not use a first round draft pick when trading for any offensive lineman or tight end. Now moving to the skill position players. If you're going to trade a first round draft pick and you only have one first round draft pick and you don't think you can trade away for another first, use that on a quarterback, because quarterback is easily the most important position when rebuilding a team. If you watched my Dallas Cowboys rebuild yesterday, the team was pretty incredible. I thought it was easily good enough to make the playoffs, but because I kept Dak Prescott, who's an 85 overall, we ended up finishing the season 3-3 when we were at 5-5, and we didn't make the playoffs. Now I guarantee you, if instead of using a first round draft pick to get Todd Gurley, I think, or maybe I used a second, instead of using whatever I did to get Todd Gurley, and I got a 95 overall quarterback and settled for like an 80 overall running back, I guarantee you would have made the playoffs. So I think if you're rebuilding a team, you at least need to have like a 90 overall quarterback if you want to be pretty certain to make the playoffs or maybe even go farther into the Super Bowl. Now running back is a position that you can easily get some good players at. You can easily get like an 88, 89 overall running back, but I would not use, once again, a first round draft pick if you can do so, unless you're going to trade for either Ezekiel Elliott or David Johnson. Unless you're trading for a running back that's over like a 96 overall, I would save your first round draft picks and just try to get some lower overall players that they're interested in. Now wide receiver, in rebuilds, I try to at least have two 90 plus overall wide receivers on the team. And the third, I try to at least have 4 quality ones, but at least 2 over 90 overall. It all depends on, what the team needs and what we have to trade away, but at least I try my best to go with 2 90 overall wide receivers. It's not a do or die type thing, but it really helps your success in terms of wins if you do get some talented wide receivers. Now my third and fourth wide receiver, I try to at least have like 85 overall for my third wide receiver and at least an 80 overall, if not higher. I mean, if you could somehow get like 86, 87 overall wide receivers at all 4 top wide receiver positions, that would be great. I wouldn't waste anything on like a 5th wide receiver unless you just felt like it, but there's not really even any point in having, like, unless you keep injuries on for your rebuilds and maybe you're playing it actually, not just simming, I would, have maybe a quality 5th wide receiver, but if you're just based off simming, I would definitely get 4 quality wide receivers over 80 and at least 2 over 90 to guarantee some success and to make the playoffs. Now moving on to defense. Defense is pretty tricky. Now the defensive line, I think defensive line is a lot less important compared to other positions. I normally get defensive linemen because there's a lot out there. The defensive linemen are actually very highly rated compared to other positions. You can find some pretty high rated defensive ends and defensive tackles that you can get for not a crazy amount. But if you have a limited amount of resources to trade away, I would shy away from the defensive line and use them at the cornerback and linebacker positions. I usually at least try to get 2 quality middle linebackers, one over 90 and the backup at least being 83 or higher. If I choose a team that has like an 80 overall middle linebacker already, I'll usually try to just keep him and not trade him away and just try to use him as the backup middle linebacker. The outside linebackers, they're pretty important too. There's some older guys you can get over 90 overall, but if they're like 87 overall or so, I would be happy with it. I want to guarantee that my middle linebacker is my highest overall linebacker, at least like a 91 or higher possibly. So you want to, if you're going to use anything in the front 7, like a first round draft pick, I would definitely use it on my middle linebacker. There's a lot of good options like Bobby Wagner, Luke Kuechly are my go-tos in rebuild. Now at strong safety, there's some you can go out and get, like a Landon Collins or Earl Thomas, that is not completely impossible to get. That's really good at 94 overall plus. But if you can at least get some starters at the safety positions, both of them, that are like at least 87, 88, I would be content. If that was my worst position on defense, if my worst position on defense was like an 87 overall strong safety or free safety, I wouldn't be too mad at that. Now, I already went over defensive line. There's some good ones you can get, but I wouldn't waste way too much on the D-line. Like I said, you can get like a Cameron Jordan's actually pretty hard to get. You can get like a Cameron Wake and Ndamukong Suh for relatively easy. And there's some other defensive linemen. If worst comes to worst, you can convert. That's something I don't do a lot in rebuilds, which I'm probably going to start doing because it helps trade for different players. You can also, don't forget, you can convert players to different positions. Like even Von Miller, I could guarantee if it's easier for you to trade for an outside linebacker than a defensive end, depending on your resources, I would just convert Von Miller to a defensive end, and he'd probably still going to be a 99 overall defensive end, and then just go out and spend, instead of a 3rd round draft pick on a defensive end, use a 3rd round draft pick to get a decent outside linebacker. Now, I believe, personally, the most important and trickiest position on defense is the cornerback position. I at least try to get 4 cornerbacks over 80 overall. And the Broncos are a perfect example right here, because I try to have at least 2 cornerbacks over 90 overall plus, and the second 2 at least 80. If I can have them over 85, that's the dream. But there's no real point in having 5 beast cornerbacks. Same thing like wide receiver, unless you're actually playing the games and have injuries on and can, risk having a player get injured or so. So that's really how I assess the teams and see really where I need to spend the most of my resources in terms of trading away on. So moving on to the specialist, like, to be completely honest, I never trade for a kicker or punter. Maybe that would be smart if I did so, because it really doesn't take much. Like, I think you can get Justin Tucker if you want to go after the best kicker in the league. I think it doesn't take more than like maybe a 4th round draft pick. But in terms of this, maybe it's something I need to change moving forward. But I don't think I've ever traded for a kicker or punter in a rebuild. Now, a couple little tricks that I use in terms of trading players away to get value in return in connected franchises that you've probably seen in my rebuilds. So, I don't know why this is the case. It's the first year I remember this ever being a thing. But no matter who you have at quarterback, if they're like over a 70 overall, the team is interested in them in terms of it being yellow. If it's over, sometimes it's sketchy. But for the most part, if they're like 71 or higher, they are interested in them in terms of the yellow. Now, the yellow can get you at least a 3rd or 4th round draft pick. So it's the same thing with running back. So for some reason, sometimes running back, some teams are interested in him. Even with him being a 69 overall, like every single team is interested in both of these guys. And you can, like, if you have that deal that is almost close to going through, and you have like a 69 overall running back or a 70 overall quarterback, teams, that could be the deal breaker in bringing in a player in a trade. Now, even like that's a good example. I'm glad it's in the red in terms of Chad Kelly, because even the quarterbacks that are in the red, like there's some teams that like are interested in them, but some quarterbacks, even they're in the red, like you can get something decent in return, maybe a 5th round draft pick, because quarterbacks and running backs, if they're over, I think 65 overall, they value them at 2 stars. So see, just like that, I got a 5th round draft pick for a player they weren't interested in. That's not normally the case. Normally, if they're not interested in the player, if it's not quarterback or running back, you can't even get like a 7th from this year. You're getting lucky if you can get a 7th from next year for those players. So quarterbacks, even if they're not interested in them, they could be the difference in a trade as well. Not as much if it's in the red compared to it being yellow in terms of their interest, but it still could be the difference in a deal breaker in a trade. Now, another little trick, this is just like a tip if you want to try to get things a bit done faster. Like, say you pick, like, there's some positions that other teams need, even though they're like 74 or 70. So if you have, like, if you don't think your 74, 75 overall backups, maybe even 72, 73 overall backups have value in a trade, what I always do is I'll find some crappy backups, or not really crappy, but let's say a 75 overall right tackle who you really wouldn't think would be a big addition in a trade. And then let's go on defense, find somebody like a 72 overall. Let's go with, can we have any 70s, any 71 Brendan Langley. So what you do, see, there's already two, like the Lions are interested in 2 of these players. One interested in a lot, one interested in just a little bit. Now, what you want to do is just makes things go by faster. If you just click the right trigger, I guess it's the same thing on PS4. If you just like tap it, it goes by really fast, and you can. This really helps me out in speed rebuilds when somebody told me this. Like, you can just see if there's any teams that are interested in these players instead of like going down like this, which I used to do. But that really changed things, makes things go by a lot smoother. So nobody out there is interested in that cornerback, which kind of sucks. But there are a couple of teams out there even interested in the 74 overall wide receiver in terms of it being green. Now the 49ers, this is the thing. You can get a 1st round draft pick rather easily for all the players that they're interested in terms of the green, even if he's a 74 overall. It's weird how they value players, but it's just the case. Like, the 49ers, it's probably going to be the same if I had like an 82 overall wide receiver compared to the 74, just because they really do need a wide receiver. So let's see what it's going to take to bring in a 1st round draft pick. They have the 2nd overall draft pick, but another thing, the only draft pick that is highly valued at a 5-star is the number 1 overall draft pick. The 2nd round draft pick, or the 2nd overall draft pick in lower in the 1st round, all are valued at 4 stars in terms of trade. Once we add in this player to the deal, so this is about halfway. Now what you want to do in this case is to try to find another team, if there is another team interested in them, and see which one wants them more. Like the Panthers want them as well. Now, let's see how close this is to going through. They're both, like, even though this one's a little bit lower, it shouldn't be that different in terms of the value, because, like I said, the only trade, or the only 1st round draft pick that is valued at a 5-star is the number 1 overall draft pick. Now, we're going to see, what you want to do, like I said, is send him or try the trade and see which one is the closest to going through for a 1st round draft pick, because they're going to equally help you as much in a trade if you're trading that 1st round draft pick away. So, Henderson, I'm going to send him through, see, look how close that is compared to the other one. And I guarantee you, if we got the 49ers draft pick, it would not mean more in a trade than this 1st round draft pick from the Panthers. So I do want to go to the 49ers trade just to prove a point. It is still easy to get this draft pick from the Panthers, or from the 49ers. It is from the Panthers too, but from the 49ers, even though it's a 2nd round draft pick, if you believe it means more than the other one, what you want to do is you want to also add a draft pick along with the deal. It's kind of like you're trading up. For some reason, when you pair a player and a draft pick together, the trade value goes up a ton. So if you tag along a 4th round draft pick, this will go through straight up. There you go. A 4th round draft pick was enough to bring that through. Now the reason I pointed out that the player and the draft pick together make a really good value deal is because I guarantee you, I kind of wish I could show you, but I can't go back now, is if I took out the 4th round draft pick, although it said their interest was like none, that it was like read by the 4th round draft pick, if I threw in the running back thing, where like every running back they're interested in, and it was yellow, I guarantee you, with it being a player, 2 players paired together, the trade wouldn't have gone through. Although it did say they were interested in the running back, which is just weird. It's just a little, I don't know, maybe a glitch or whatever it is, maybe a code written to the game that it means more in terms of value if you pair a player and draft pick together. So even though they're interested in the running back and not the 4th round draft pick, this deal went through because it was the player and draft pick paired together. Now, another thing which is really weird in terms of the pairing of a draft pick and a player is we can use Julio Jones as an example because he's somebody really easy to get. Like, let me try to do something really quick. The value system is all screwed up in Madden, but I want to show you a good example. So let's just go with the free safety that they want. The Justin Simmons, they're probably going to want him. They'll probably be pretty close to going through. That's about a little bit less than halfway. But if you guys, this makes no sense. So Justin Simmons is added into the deal, and they value him at 5 stars as you saw. Let's try to find one more player they are interested in. Let's see if they want Bradley Roby by chance. They don't. Wow, just give me a player they want. Okay, we'll try Keep Talib. So Keep Talib and Justin Simmons for Julio Jones. Now the reason I show you guys this is because they value both of these players at 5 stars. And as you see, the trade is maybe a little bit more than 3/4 of the way to go through. But if we take out Aqib Talib, and we throw in the first round draft pick from the Broncos, and we have the 6th overall draft pick, which is valued at 4 stars. But even with the first round draft pick being valued at 4 stars, the trade is going to be closer to going through than the Aqib Talib trade, which is really weird because as you see, the Falcons value the first round draft pick at 4 stars, but this one's in the green compared to Aqib Talib, which they valued at 5 stars, which makes no sense because it seems like they'd want 2 5-star value players opposed to 1. But even though they value them less, the trade is higher up in terms of their trade interest if it is a player and pick combined together. Now, it's a little bit different. Draft picks, you really can't combine and get much value out of it. Like, you can get some value, and sometimes adding a second draft pick to complete a deal is necessary, but if you add in a first and second round draft pick right here, see, it's a little bit over halfway to going through. And like, some teams really don't even value first round draft picks over second round draft picks that much. So just for Julio Jones, if we were to throw a first round draft pick, that's what you see right there. That's about 1/4 of the way to go through. Now, if you take out the first round draft pick and throw in a second round draft pick, it's really weird because that's not that much less than the first round draft pick. So it might be weird, but if you don't add in a player and a draft pick, the first round draft pick is not valued that much opposed to a second round draft pick. Another little trick is your fullbacks. Although a lot of them are really low overall, you can find some teams that do want a fullback. And that's actually pretty cool because I think I could be wrong, but I think the threshold's about 60. So if the running backs or the fullbacks are over 60 overall, you can find some teams that want them. And when they have that interest in the yellow, I think some teams you might be able to squeeze out a 3rd round draft pick. And some teams you might not be able to, but I think the 1st round draft pick is actually even just as close as a 3rd. Maybe I could be wrong. But as you see, getting a 1st round draft pick instead of a 3rd for a 66 overall fullback is about exactly the same in terms of value. But if you do, once again, if you pair a draft pick with this deal, I think a 3rd might be enough to get the 1st round draft pick. So if you trade a fullback and a 3rd round draft pick and trade all the way up to a 1st round draft pick, look at that. Absolutely incredible. And another little trick that I have found out is that teams really value safeties and cornerbacks that they aren't interested in, just like the quarterbacks and running backs. So the quarterbacks and running backs that teams don't want, 99% of the time, they value them at 2 stars, which really can help out a deal if you need one last thing to add into it to get it accepted. And it's the same thing with cornerbacks. Although it does say sometimes that they only value them at 1 star, you get a lot more out of a trade if it's a cornerback or a safety opposed to a linebacker or opposed to an offensive lineman. So if you need just a little bit more to get a trade completed, if you throw in a crappy cornerback or just go through your positions, try your cornerback, safety, strong safety, your lowest overall at those positions. And if those don't work, try defensive end. And I guarantee you one of those positions, even though if they're a 65 to 70 overall player that they're not interested in, will eventually work and go through. It's very rarely that it's not the case in my rebuilds. And that's why you see sometimes randomly I'll have like a 65 overall cornerback added into a deal to get a really good player because he was the difference in adding that deal. So just because they're not completely interested in the player in terms of it being yellow or green, that doesn't mean that those players don't help you out at all in the deal. Now, another trick that I do use is trading up my draft picks. When I try to talk about trading up for stuff and trying to trade away players, I talk about trading away players that have value that could be the difference in deals. Now, there's a huge difference in terms of value from a next year's 4th round draft pick and a 3rd round draft pick. A 4th round draft pick doesn't really mean much, but a 3rd round draft pick means just about as much as a running back and quarterback does, although it does say the teams are interested in the 3rd round draft picks. I don't know, sometimes it's just weird like that. So I try to trade up for a lot of 2019 3rd round draft picks. They mean a lot in trades. But it really does not take much at all to trade up for a 3rd round draft pick from next year. If this doesn't go through right here, which it does, what you probably could have done, which would have been smarter, I probably could have taken out just like done 2 of these draft picks and circulated through the teams, and eventually you will find a team that will accept a 3rd round draft pick from next year for the 2 draft picks that I just tried to trade away. So I was kind of lazy there and probably should have done that. But just because the 49ers didn't accept that trade right away, I could have found at least one team, which I do a lot. It takes a lot of time and it does take a lot of patience. But one of the 32 teams, I promise you, would accept the trade for a 5th and 6th from next year for a 3rd round draft pick from next year. Once again, it's all about getting those draft picks and players that cost some value that can be the difference in bringing in a big player for your rebuild. Now, another thing which is really weird is the middle linebacker situation. Although these linebackers, you will never never find a team 95% of the time that are interested in players in terms of it being green, which is the biggest amount of interest a team can have. They're not ever going to be interested in a player that's under 70 overall. They might sometimes be interested in them with it being orange, and that's the value of about a third or fourth round draft pick, and maybe sometimes just a fifth, depending on the team. But for some reason, really low middle linebackers, anywhere from 65 to 70, sometimes maybe like 63, 64, you can find one team that does want one of them. And I'm just going to circulate through the teams really quick and see if we can find anybody that does want them. Hopefully it doesn't make me look bad. See? Right here, the Browns. Maybe 65 is a little bit too low, but a team that actually wants a 68 overall middle linebacker. And you got to remember, once you do all these trades, and maybe you're like 7 or 8 trades in, a lot of the team needs change. So I wouldn't, just because nobody's interested in these 65 overall middle linebackers, if we were going to do an actual rebuild, once we get like 7, 8 trades deep, just try circulating through them again. I guarantee you'll find one team that do want one of them. But just because he's 68, we probably still can get a first-round draft pick from the Browns for him, because, like I said, there's not that big of a difference in terms of a 68 overall player and an 89 overall player in terms of trades when they have the green interest. It may be a little bit, and might help out a trade a little bit if you throw in a 90 overall player compared to the 68, but it's not that big of a difference, not as much as you'd think. We can probably still get a first-round draft pick for this guy if we pair him with a draft pick. Let's try to get the number 1 overall draft pick, which is one of the 2 draft picks that are valued at 5 stars. This will probably be maybe halfway to going through. That's what I expected. But if we do throw in, I want to try to go as little as possible. I don't think the 4th will be enough. I think a 3rd should easily be enough to get the number 1 overall draft pick. So we don't even have a 3rd, which kind of sucks. So we'll try the 4th. Look at that. Look how close that deal is to going through. And now here's the cornerback thing. You wouldn't think a team would want a crappy cornerback. Let's go with the lowest overall safety or cornerback that we have. That's a 63, Jamal Carter. And I guarantee this deal goes through. Guaranteed. Just kidding, I lied. But like I said, you gotta circulate sometimes. So we'll try the low overall cornerback, so 69 overall, Lorenzo Doss. Since he's a little bit high overall, there you go. It just takes sometimes trading away or circulating through some positions. But look at that, man. We get the number 1 overall draft pick for a 68 overall middle linebacker, a 4th round draft pick, and a 69 overall cornerback. That is absolute highway robbery. And like I said, the number 1 and number 2 overall draft pick are like the 2 highest valued draft picks in Connected Franchise in terms of trades. So definitely, if you can pick one up for something like this, use it to the best of your disposal. So last real tip or trick that I have for you guys today, and if I remember one, I probably forgot a lot of stuff. Like I said, I apologize. This video is very unorganized, but hopefully still, regardless, you found it somewhat helpful. But the last real tip or trick I have that I can think of is forcing a team neat. Now what I mean by that is, let me show you. So we have a 73 overall Paxton Lynch, who they kind of want, so that means we might be able to squeeze a 3rd round draft pick out of it, and maybe if we pair a deal together, we could maybe get a 1st out of it. But sometimes you don't always have those draft picks to pair in the trades to be able to get the 1st round draft pick or maybe 2nd round draft pick. But anyways, weird thing too, I do want to show you this. It's really weird. It's just a little thing to show you. They don't really value the 1st and 2nds much more. So like, you would think if you threw this in there, that's about halfway to going through. If you threw in a 2nd, it should be a little bit closer to going through, because I mean it's a 2nd round draft pick opposed to a 1st. But I guarantee you this isn't in the yellow. See, it went up just a little bit. That's stupid. But anyways, what I'm trying to show you is right now they only want Paxton Lynch in terms of it being like yellowish, orange, whatever color you say that is. But if we force a team need, we probably can end up getting a 1st round draft pick for Paxton Lynch, because that will make the number 1 team need quarterback, and they will take any quarterback possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to trade for Aaron Rodgers just to force the need. That might not make their number 1 team need quarterback, so if that's the case, you trade for the backup, which is Brett Hundley as well. So just to make the video go by smooth, I'll trade whatever it takes. We'll trade Aqib Talib, and then our number 1 middle linebacker. And when you really can get Aaron Rodgers, if you're looking for an easy quarterback to trade for, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is the best bang for your buck. Just some people get tired of seeing the same quarterback every time, and you might get tired of using the same quarterback every time. But we can just throw in, probably this might get accepted straight up right here. Pretty close to going through. And now, once again, once you pair players together with draft picks, we probably can throw in maybe a 3rd from next year, maybe, and no, but a 2nd. This might be a perfect example for something else I want to talk about. If this isn't accepted, we'll throw in this, and although it is, they do like the 2nd round draft pick in terms of interest, we're going to throw this in there, and it doesn't get accepted. Now you would think if I throw in the 1st round draft pick from next year, because it's obviously a 1st opposed to a 2nd, the trade interest level would go up. Well, it never does, ever. So you throw in the 1st round draft pick from next year opposed to the 2nd, and although it's like 20 or 30 picks higher and it's a 1st round draft pick, that didn't go up at all, if any. So that's really, really weird. So just to make the deal go through, I probably could throw in a 4th from this year, for this to go through, but just to make the deal go through, I'm throwing a second from this year, get it accepted. So now, the Packers' #1 team need is quarterback. Okay, so I was kind of confused there. I had to back out. Sometimes, if like that's another thing that's really annoying in connected franchise when you're trading. Once you trade for a player, and if you're trying to trade that player, you just trade it for away, or you trade for a draft pick, then you want to trade that draft pick away, you have to back all the way out to the main menu and connect the franchise and go back in, then they'll pop up. It's stupid, they just disappear. But anyways, it was showing me that all three of these players, they weren't interested in because, I don't know, I guess you had to back all the way out. Now we come back into it, and they do want Trevor Siemian in terms of the green, which is really, really good. But what I want to try is I want to also trade away for Brett Hundley and see if I have a conspiracy that's correct. Just to make this go through quickly, I'm going to throw in Chris Harris just to make this trade get accepted ASAP. Wow, that's stupid. This game is so stupid sometimes, but let's just roll with it, because why not? Throw in some 5th round draft picks, make this get accepted, and it was accepted. Now, I do want to see, one thing like I said, you have to back all the way out to this menu, then come back in for Brett Hundley to pop up. Now I want to see if now they're interested in Paxton Lynch and the other quarterback that they weren't interested in just a second ago. So if we throw in these 3 fellas, they want all of them. So what I'm thinking is the case. So if you force a team need to this point where you trade for the starting quarterback or starting player of that position and their backup, and you have a player that's higher overall than their current starter now, which is like a 65 overall, they'll be interested in them in terms of the green. And you can do this with any position. Now we probably can sneak out a 1st round draft pick for Paxton Lynch. Let's see, and if not, we can just throw in maybe a 5th on top of the deal. And look how close that is, a 1st round draft pick, when earlier you might not even have been able to get like a 4th from the Packers for Paxton Lynch, just because you forced that need. And I want to try it with one other position and see how much you can actually stretch that. So if we throw in a 5th and a 6th, we should be able to get a 1st round draft pick from the Packers. Look at that. Insane. We probably didn't even have to throw in the 6th round draft pick. Now I want to try and show you the extent you can actually do this. So we're going to try to force the Rams' top need to middle linebacker and see if we can get them interested in like a 65 overall middle linebacker. So Mark Barron, we'll just do whatever it takes to get these players. We'll just throw in their #1 team need, which is going to be a wide receiver. We have some good ones, Emmanuel Sanders. Let's see if we can get both these guys at one time just to make this go by faster. Alec Ogletree as well. Throw this in there, and that's actually pretty close. And there's just some random players that they, like, some teams value at 1 star, which is really weird. And I probably could get Mark Barron for like a 4th round draft pick. It's all about getting as much as possible from as little as possible, if that makes sense. Get as much value as possible out of every single deal. So just to hurry and make this go through, try a second for next year, and it was accepted because we paired a player with a draft pick. And since I just showed you the force and need thing, I guarantee you, if I would have traded for Mark Barron, I could have got him for maybe at most a 3rd round draft pick. Or maybe a 4th, maybe a 5th. I'm not sure. They only valued him at 1 star, so it shouldn't have been a lot. If anything, a backup running back to get Mark Barron. But because we forced our team needs, it's already showed you the thing where they are interested in low overall players. If you force that team need to #1, we could have completely finessed them where we trade for a 4th round draft pick, then trade them the player back for a 1st, where we might have to pair a draft pick together, but it's still a lot more that you get in the end than what you give away. Just completely by finessing them. In the end, you really don't give anything away because you got them technically for free if you make this go through. So for Mark Barron, that's already in the yellow for a 1st round draft pick, and that's really weird because they just valued him at 1 star, but now they need him, they value him at 5 stars. So we pair him with a crappy draft pick. Maybe we can pair, or maybe we can throw in a 69 overall running back. Like I said, they're always interested in these players, and that's really close to going through. If we threw in a 4th, it probably would have been accepted right away. Now, you could easily throw in one of these crappy quarterbacks and get that 1st round draft pick. But I want to show you once again the strong safety thing. 63 overall strong safety might not go through, but it's not worth trying. And it doesn't go through. So now we go next to a backup free safety who they might be interested in. They're not. Okay, so that still works. Just because they're not interested in them, and some teams are, doesn't make his value any higher. Maybe just a little bit more because he's a high overall, but not that much. And it was accepted. So just like that, even though they do value him at 1 star, he's a free safety and they value that position more than some others. You get a 1st round draft pick for Mark Barron, a 69 overall running back, and a 74 overall free safety. Now, some people might not like this, but because some people might just want to be able to build whatever team they want to, you can sign free agents at the quarterback or running back and middle linebacker position, and you'll always find some teams interested in them. Even though they're on a 1-year contract and they're low overall, Like I said, they're always interested in quarterbacks and running backs. Although it doesn't always say they are, they'll still give you like a 5th or 4th, which you can end up combining those picks together and trading them up for a 3rd round draft pick or a 2nd round draft pick or maybe even a 1st round draft pick if you get enough draft picks. So, just for video's sake, we're going to sign Jake Rudock, and I'm not going to lie, I'm not really sure what the threshold is in terms of interest, but they're a lot more likely to be interested in players if they're younger. And just because Gradkowski is a 68 overall, and he's a 34-year-old quarterback, not any team is going to have him interested in terms of the orange, but just because it's red, and I know I'm throwing out all these freaking colors for this video, but just because it's red, you still get a decent amount of value for him because he's a quarterback. Now, next I want to sign just a couple running backs. We'll sign Alex Collins, just for video's sake, and then we'll sign a middle linebacker. I think I already did sign a middle linebacker, but I want to show you guys, just because he's a free agent doesn't mean you can't get anything from him. So, and they're on 1-year contracts, which is crazy, but this is how the game is. So we're throwing Jake Rudock, throwing Alex Collins, who we just signed, and we'll also throw in a low overall middle linebacker. I think Sam Barrington, who we signed out of free agency. And look, there's some teams in terms of interest in the green in terms of Sam Barrington. I told you, you can get a lot in return for low overall middle linebackers, and it's more than one team, I think, that does want Barrington. So you see right there, the Dolphins want him too. And no team really wants Rudock, but this is probably the last thing I'm going to show you guys in today's video. Just because it's in the red doesn't mean you can't get a good draft pick for him, because they're still going to value him at 2 stars, and if for whatever reason it says 1 star, it's still a more valued 1-star value player than any other position. I know that's kind of confusing, but you have to roll with it. Let's see if we can get a 4th. I think we easily probably could get a 4th, and it's really close, and that's a good amount for a player that they say they don't want. And let me see if eventually, I think maybe it might be 65 overall. That's the threshold in terms of bumping up the interest at all at position. But we'll try Carter, see if this will go through. It went up a little bit. So next we'll try a crappy 71 overall cornerback. This should easily go through. I'd probably try a 3rd instead, but they don't have a 3rd, and it was accepted. So that was a lot of talking and a lot of tips and a lot of tricks, and I probably didn't say everything that I used because I can't really remember all at once. Hopefully, whatever, at least a couple of things I said made sense. I know that has a lot of like maybe terms and that I made up myself that might not make sense to you, but hopefully it does. And for whatever reason, hopefully you guys did find this video enjoyable and helpful. And I don't normally do stuff like this, but a lot of people have requested this, and it's something I don't really know a lot about a lot of things, but since I do this so much, I know little like tricks and little exploits that do help you out in terms of rebuilds. So not a lot of people might find this fun because it might seem like cheating, but I think it just is helpful in terms of getting the most from what you have in the team to build whatever team you want to, because you really can't build whatever team you want to offline and then put them into a connected franchise, because it's just dumb, and the way they have roster creation offline is just dumb. So like, you have to take cap hit into consideration, and you can't really edit the salary cap for a player unless you're in connected franchise. So this is like the best way possible to build your dream team, is by rebuilding. And you might have to use exploits now and then, but hopefully whatever reason you found this video enjoyable and helpful. So with that said, boys, hopefully you guys did enjoy. If we can smash 3,000 likes for today's video, that would be absolutely incredible. Be sure to let me know if you did find this video helpful. And if you have any other tips that I did not explain, and there's probably some stuff I do know that I didn't talk about because there's so many things that I use in rebuilds. So if you have anything else you want to add, let me know in the comment section below. Maybe you can tell me something that I didn't know. But with that said, guys, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new, and turn on the notification bell if you haven't. But with that said, I will catch you guys next time. Have a great rest of your day. Peace.